Hey guys, what is going on? This is Blue again. We are here once more at Gamescom doing another developer interview. Once again, I have Jonathan Sharp with me, and we're going to talk a little bit about balance and some of the changes that were recently discussed. So our first question, again, talking a little bit about some of the big changes announced the other day, with the potential to shake up the meta here was the flanking strike change on Thief. What was kind of the thought pattern behind this change? How do you think it's going to affect a lot of the meta? Like we see most Thieves right now running that meta 20066 build on SD Thief. So how do you kind of envision it changing that as well as the SD Thief in general?
Sure. I'm not sure it's going to hit stuff like Mug or Bountiful Theft at all, like acrobatics. You're probably going to still see more of that stuff, right? Like you're used to seeing. The idea that we were going with was more of you have to have play to it now. So you've got to hit the first strike to set up the second one, right? You're seeing something similar with what we did for the adrenaline change to the Warriors, which we can talk about further, but it's the idea of giving play to both sides, so that if you can kind of miss that first one, maybe you have a chance now to punish the Thief, right? That's kind of the idea, that maybe if they miss the first one, they don't automatically get the second one. So that's kind of what we're thinking, is we want to put more counterplay into it, so that there's more back and forth, and it's not just, he can just spam 3 if he wants to and get off the evasion and the damage, you know what I mean? He's got to think about it more now, so there's more counterplay on both sides of the equation.
Very good. All right, so moving on from that, talking a bit more about Thief here. So do you feel that we're going to see more of a big shift over towards dagger pistol Thieves now that, again, with the change to the auto attack, now kind of being a two-person cleave there? A lot of Thieves that I've talked to have kind of considered that an overall buff. So do you think we're going to see a much more larger shift of Thieves kind of playing that as their flavor of the month spec, or do you think we're still going to see a pretty good balance now between both SD Thieves and DP Thieves?
The hope is to have more of a balance. When you look at the dagger, same thing for the Necro. A lot of times it's just not viable in PvE or World versus World for a lot of times because you don't have that cleave. With a lot of time, you need that cleave to do a lot of things. So we'll have to see how that plays out. So what we wanted to do was open up a new avenue for those Thieves. So it's a small buff, if you think about it that way. It's a functional buff. There's no number changes other than you can now hit multiple targets, which means that you have the cleave potential if you need it, which means if you're cleaving a body in PvP or if you're fighting 2 guys in a PvE encounter, you now have that as an option, which we just wanted to open up those options for the Thief players out there. Will it supplant and overtake the SD? I'm not sure. I think that they both serve very different roles, very powerful. You just look at the offhand stuff that you get from a pistol Thief, like they can just really keep somebody shut down if they want to. It's a very different role. So while you have the aggression of the sword dagger, I think that having the control now of the dagger pistol, that's a different role. So hopefully we can see both of them in the same meta at the same time, but in very different roles.
Very good, very good. All right, so now moving on to Warrior. This one was also recently showcased. With some of the currently proposed changes, I've been talking with a couple higher tier Warriors like Ram and whatnot. Some of them feel that we might be seeing a shift towards some of the more Zerky Warriors that were possibly running with Axe, really like any offhand, and then Greatsword. Similar to some of the builds that we saw a long time ago, back when teams like Super Squad and Team Paradigm, if anybody remembers Super Squad back there, when they used to run that crazy build with quickness and everything there. Some Warriors feel that we may be seeing a shift back over towards that. So, I mean, do you personally think we'll be seeing a shift to that, or is that still going to be a little bit far out?
We could. Same thing that we just said for the Thief is kind of what we're thinking for the Warrior as well. We wanted to kind of tone down the ability for the Warrior to just get off Cleansing Ire whenever they wanted to, and it was really easy to do. If you're punished, if you miss your burst skill, it's a big deal now. So there's that counterplay back and forth. If they block, or if you're blinded, those types of things, if they evade, now all of a sudden you got to think about, I didn't get off my Cleansing Ire, the momentum in the fight has shifted to my opponent, right? So we'll have to see how that plays. I think that again though, like you look at those Zerk Warriors, it's a very different role from what we see in the current Hambos, if that's what you're looking at, or the Axe Bow, right? So it's a very different role. Again, just like the Thief, we want to see if both of those types of warriors can coexist in the same meta because they're such different types of warriors. So that's what we're thinking might happen. We want to watch the meta to see what happens with that, to see if we want to do any further changes. But similar mentality to what we said about the Thief is we want to open up some different specs and some different options. You look at the Greatsword, it's still going to hit. It's going to hit really hard. We might see some of the old Frenzy 100 Blades, that type of stuff. It's really cool when you see that stuff go off. It's also cool because your opponent has a lot of counterplay. They can see it coming, they see the animations, there's a lot of counterplay. So again, I keep coming back to that word, but counterplay. We want to see a lot more counterplay for the Warrior as well as the Thief.
All right. Awesome. So again, kind of similar to the thief question I just asked about possibly phasing out old builds and bringing in new ones. So with the changes to cleansing iron and adrenaline in general, some more warriors have been kind of talking about how things like Hambo and the axe longbow build may be a little bit more punishing to play, and it might not be as accessible anymore, just due to the fact that again the cleansing iron will be pretty big for longbow in general there, with the fact that again it's no longer, you're not going to be able to run behind cover and just pop that down to get a quick condi cleanse anymore. So do you feel that again we'll be seeing more of a shift towards the new builds, or again, are we still aiming for more of that balance that you were talking about earlier?
Yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, cleansing iron is going to function differently with everything. For instance, Eviscerate, you've got to land with that thing, right? It's extremely powerful. Everybody has seen, like, Rom just eat faces with Eviscerate, right? Just face, face, face. But if he misses, that's going to be a big deal now. He maybe doesn't get off a key cripple or a key chill, or you know what I mean, like a poison, and all of a sudden his signet's shut down a little bit. So we're going to have to watch how that plays. Will it completely overtake the current meta? I'm not really sure. We'll have to see. We want to watch it to see how it plays. But we're kind of excited to see maybe those two warriors can exist, like we've said, in the same meta at the same time. So we'll have to see. So because of that, because of the big changes to the way that the adrenaline and the dump skills worked, we didn't want to change too much other stuff, like super drastic stuff. So that's why you'll see that for the warrior, we wanted to see that, make that change, and then watch the meta to see what happens after that.
Very good, very good. All right, so then a really quick question about Ranger, because there has been quite a little bit of debate about this one. Okay. So talking a bit, we are going to see some significant buffs to Longbow Ranger, as well as the big change on signets in general, with kind of Signet of the Beastmaster being phased out and that just being applied by default there. So with those changes coming into play, do you feel, again personally, that Power Ranger now might be a competitive mainstay, or does it still have some other issues to work around? I mean, SD Thief was definitely probably one of its largest enemies, and that's kind of being brought down a little bit now too. So do you feel it's possibly going to have a spot, or are we still a little bit far away from that?
Yeah, we'll see. I really want to see what happens with imagine like maybe a Zerk Ranger with a longbow and a greatsword, that type of thing, because they have a little bit of defense there too. So maybe they can deal with those SD thieves and stuff like that. So we'll see. I'll have to see how that plays. The changes are pretty cool. We're talking about changes, the signets, so you kind of get those by default now before you had to trade to get the ability on yourself. You're also seeing some increasing, some of the traits we put in before, the Grandmaster to help the longbow dish out a lot more damage. There's also the change to the multiple changes on the greatsword. There's also the change to the rapid fire on the bow. It just comes out faster. You can spike with it. It's quicker. Those things I think will put him in a place to be the king of range DPS, which if you're a ranger and you're using a longbow, I feel like you should be the king of range DPS in the game, especially since you're single target, right? You don't have the AoE that maybe a staff ellie might have, but you're single target. So I think that we can let those guys be a little bit stronger in power than they are right now. So I think that internally the build does work and it's viable. We'll have to see what the meta says, right? Because we don't have nearly the players that you guys have. So we're really excited. We think that he performs kind of a Mesmer type role, right? But he's got different tools than the Mesmer has, but at range, with a greatsword, a Mesmer will eat you alive, but so will now a Ranger. So we really want to see how that plays. So it could be good.
Excellent. All right, and then we got one more question for you. This is kind of a big one. Okay, so again, this is a topic that is brought up a lot on the forums. So I'm kind of asking if you could elaborate a little bit on the current balance philosophy that's in the game here. There's always been talk about doing frequent minor changes over the current system, which seems to be larger changes over longer periods of time. Now, why is it that you guys do currently favor that system of doing those bigger changes over the longer periods of time?
Like we just said, we want to watch the meta a lot of times. Now, if there's a big thing, like sometimes, like we did stuff with the Rune of the Pirate, the bird, way too good. So we had to just instantly just say, this has just got to go right now. So we're not afraid to do stuff like that if we have to. You look at the Runes of Strength, that type of stuff. We've got to be careful with things that fill the same role. So if something like what we just saw, like we saw birds just going around just eating people and taking a lot more damage than they should be taking. So and they've also got evasion. So we had to be careful with that. We had to say, wait, this is just off. So we're not afraid to make those small, quick changes like that when something is just a complete outlier and it's just obvious, like, oh, this has just got to go. For the other stuff though, we want to put the changes out and then we want to watch the meta develop. If you recall, there was a time when maybe a year-ish ago, Warriors were not in the meta at all. They were just completely horrible. We made a lot of changes. We did some shaves up. We gave them some stuff. And then it took a while for people to realize, oh wait, these actually are good. These actually are, oh, these are really good. These are awesome. Actually, they're required. Like, you know, it took almost, you know, a couple months for people to kind of make that progression. So we don't want to just throw out changes and then a month later, here's more changes, and then here's more changes.
Essentially, like, you don't want to eliminate something before it's a thing in the meta, basically, or phasing out things that could possibly become meta before they actually happen.
Yeah, we want to give it time to develop, almost like an ecosystem or an environment. We want to give it time to grow and develop. Those new builds, we want to see if they can stand up to the current builds and maybe push them out or stand up next to them, like we've said for some of the other builds, right? So that's why we kind of do that. Having said that, if it's a number change, just like for instance the health on the bird, right? If it's just something quick like that, we're not afraid to do that. But if it's a change to a system, like the adrenalines, like, you know what I mean, the burst skills, like that's a pretty big thing. So that one we want to put it out there, let it sit, watch how it does. That's going to affect every single warrior who plays the game, right? But we think it's good for the game and it gives counterplay. So a big change like that, we want to let it sit. But the smaller numbers, we could do those pretty quickly and then keep moving. So that's kind of why we have the two that you see. One is the much more longer, let's put it out and let's wait. But we're not afraid to make really quick things if we have to, if we know that they're going to be safe and they're just number changes.
Very good. Well, thank you very much for your time, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you guys as well for helping me get here to Gamescom. Without your help, I would not be here. And shout outs as well to DragonSeason.com. They did try to help me out a little bit with getting press passes in here to Gamescom, so be sure to go ahead and give those guys a visit. Other than that, though, guys, be sure to subscribe. We have, I believe, 1 or 2 more interviews coming up, and we'll see y'all later. Have a good one, guys.